Hello, this is what I think. But thinking means I'm just talking something which is in my brain. So it may not mean I practice it. But the point is, thinking and the practice need to be aligned, and decisions are made at each instance so that you can make the connection of what you're thinking to what you're acting, which means you need to be in here and now to choose which of those words and the logic I use in my brain at that moment. So the next moment, as I talk, I may think of something else, so you have to keep on going back and forth. So to be sincere, honest, and truthful in the way I act in life, we have to have a good connection with all the stuff in our brain, memories in the past and logic that I use, the habitual pattern that I have developed, has to be truthful instead of all congested memories and logic and get into the way so that it's not coherent by itself. But even if it's coherent, if it's not fit to the instance of who we are, it doesn't fly because it's just a concept you're talking about. So this sounds like a nonsense, but I'm trying to see what I feel, how we live, sincerely, truthfully, can be done in this manner, which is always be here and now. What does that mean? Because when we are in the brain, we may be just discussing this and that. But if we forget that we are living in here and now, it's not proper. It's just words on the paper, like in the book. And when you read it, what does that mean? Because you need to translate that understanding which goes into your brain to be connected to making the right action at the moment when you need that information. Maybe it's too much to say this much. Let me talk like this. I keep talking about samadhi. No mind, no self, here and now. Why here and now? Because that's the only moment that we live. And in that moment, we want to be sincere and truthful to act upon whatever we feel right. So the right judgment should be there. But the right judgment may not happen. And that's fairly common because the circumstance we are in and the logic that we have may not have a good connection not because of the circumstance is wrong, because circumstance at each moment is truthful. It's how everything is. So to bridge the gap of what that provide us to take action based upon the reality of what's going on here and now, we need to be able to process information wherever we've got in our brain, suited to the need. So maybe talking about AI. AI is the same. Each step of the way to bring out the answer to whatever the question you may have asked to ChatGPT, for example, they synthesize the content of the information in the algorithm which is like a brain, and try to pick certain words and depend upon the logic to use at the time so that the AI produces the output step at a time as each step of those process of choosing the right action that can connect to the needs of what it is to what you've got in the memory, logic, and algorithm. You keep sort of like there's an island and you move toward the island and you find a passage this way and that way. And every time you move on, you open up the new state of what that situation is, so that you have to adjust depending on what you have done to what still is to be the goal of how to answer that question. In this case, reaching to the island. So each step of your decision has to be made properly depending upon the information you got, the idea of getting the answer to whatever the resources you've got. So that's how it is progressing, and then came back to the solution. Each step of the way, what and logic moving into the approach to get to the island, which is the question or the request of the information that is given. So as much as the AI is trying to do that, we have the situation and we can choose so much option. So if the situation is there, and if the mind is drifting somewhere in your mind, and that is off from the reality of what it is, then that information you have to use to respond to the needs of the situation. You just reject what's not meaningful to connect to move into that direction for answer. So each step of the way, meaning moment to moment, our mind can work like this AI situation to keep updating here and now information needed down here on the right hand side. On the left hand is the brain, what's to choose from. And that choice changes as the needs and appearance of what the end result. As you get closer, you see it better. And then you have to be more precise to whatever you have done to adjust to fulfill the need of getting to that vision that you want to accomplish, to get to that solution, which is reaching the island, or in the case of our daily life, using our brain. You have the environment, and number one, you have to accept everything as it is. In this case, there's no request, for example, for ChatGPT. There's no questioner. The question doesn't exist when you are here and now. So what you do, just be aware. Be aware of what's out there. In this case, the light and the sound and the smell and the feel, the temperature, everything goes into me. And on top of it, there could be floating ideas. Because maybe I was tired yesterday, so I thought about something, and that thought is hanging on in my brain. And that might be part of the scenery of this brain retaining such information. Could be something different because you had a plan of doing something and there's a time schedule what to do. So that might be the higher priority. So given all the information, you need to kind of scan through all available information out there externally, but internally in your brain structure, ask the question. For example, to do it, let me just play the game. If I'm the entity to find this passage, I ask the question externally, what's going on? I capture it. And me to bridge the gap between my capability and what is apparent, the temperature, humidity, whatever, and on top of that scenery and information, I will look inside of me to see what's in my mind as something that need to be addressed. Because you've suffered something or you felt miserable or something, so there may be some unresolved situation in our brain. And if so, given this and given external and given internal, I would scan through the memory, not just the superficial part of yesterday, today, the miserable, whatever, and something scheduled to be done. That's part of the information. But there may be fundamental issues hanging over from 3 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 3 days ago, in terms of the relationship, the finance situation, and the work or health issue. Those are scattered. So external information, internal information, and I'm here in between. If I see both ends of it, then I try to see what I want to do, right? And if this person who make a decision is biased because of the ego, then I choose this information here. If this person who is to make a choice doesn't have ego, let's say he's in the samadhi situation, so no mind, so you don't put too much emphasis in this mind structure and the memory, but you may still access it, the information, like a scanning. As much as we scan the information externally, we can scan the information internally. And the life is such that we want to optimum utilize our action so that you live well. And you have learned certain skills to live well as you grew up in our brain. But at the same time, we may have the response mechanism in our body and heart, unconscious part of it. One is more accessible with words and logic. The other is not as easy to access, but it's still there. So that's the configuration of the universe we are put in that instance. Step by step, information changes. Information in a superficial conscious brain may change, but more fundamental level of a solid past information that we may have acquired may give us a sense of the history and the needs for me to be fully alive. So synthesizing that is the step to see, prioritize to make a decision. If we don't prioritize to make a decision, we may just eat the food or watch on the YouTube and do something interesting. Or you may remember the schedule, what to do, or more fundamental issue of your life desire that may be cultivated over time of being you to accomplish your mission in life, if there's such a thing, even if you don't have such a thing. the hierarchy of needs, like in the Maslow, basic sustaining life with the society and self-actualization. So those are the spectrum levels that we can access to. The needs, hierarchy, internal, external, and find the matching to come up with a solution, but it has to be done here and now. You can do some conceptual, philosophical, huge information that may be found as most important. That's okay. Then eliminate, because first thing is to identify the critical thing that you see it fit to live your life the best can be. And the criteria of that decision has, fortunate, unfortunate, two dimensions, one in the brain and one in the heart. That's why the samadhi, being here and now, no mind, no self, will provide the setting to make the decision. And us being a biological being and synthesizing all that doesn't happen like in a computer. There's a hormone and all the stimulation that is like a storm. We may be into it. So as I mentioned, depending upon the need hierarchy, you want to connect to the needs at the brain, but from the heart. From the heart to live in the now, because that's the only thing you can do, but still to make a decision incorporating all that information. So the bottom line is that to have a setting to make a decision at each time, moment to moment, to what I mentioned about, I see can be only done by being quiet, calm and quiet, knowing what's going on externally, the information I was checking on the internet, the mails and all that is part of it, or that's more into the history, right? But right now, more information just surrounding me, and more fundamental developed habitual pattern. Some worked well and not worked well. So out of that whole, to find the priority of what to do. If the system is blocked, like in silo, and the barriers stopping you to synthesize the information, you suboptimize, become narrow-minded, or very reactive without thinking. But we have all the record of what lessons we have learned, if we can access it. But some of those information, it's very important, may be hidden. And if we just haphazardly grab and run, reaction, you lose the balance. So let me conclude this discussion by saying we have external, internal, more near term and long term, some in the past, way back, and habitual pattern, some into the future, what can be done. And each has its own priorities, depending upon how you look at. But if we have the mind which only see a piece of it, making a decision. Not making a decision in here and now, but well, the decision always has to be here and now. But if we don't access the proper information and reject unnecessaries to focus on key activity to provide the information, so ultimately we feel alive, excited, or channeling the information, the energy in the right manner by identifying the issues. And to solve that may require additional samadhi. So it may not be like computer to go pop, 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 pop. But if we start to orient us toward that end, it's like a tree growing this way and that way. And every now and then you see the situation. Outside, inside, energy level coming in. And accordingly, we make a decision. Logically, in the brain, but biologically, with the way of nature manifesting inside of us to bring out the energy and talent to live the best. I think samadhi of being here now to assess and cultivate such skill would make us to achieve that. There may be more stories that I can think of talking. For example, those who are interested in music or painting or political issue and science, there are certain tendencies that can be molded into this discussion. But for now, just the setting, be here and now, open access to the information, not the bias by the ego or by the brain or by the short term or too much long term. There are varieties of information. But just being aware of it and prepare to access that attitude may help us to find the right solution as we live from moment to moment. If you are little, your action will be so and so. If you are well informed, you may be different action level. But that's the passage. It's a dynamic process of life that I see we can learn and live, making the most of it. Thank you.